Do you remember the atmosphere in your theater when Matt Murdock's cameo appeared in Spider-Man No Way Home? In my theater, the cheers and applause didn't stop. This cameo was a reminder of Marvel Television's most impressive superhero, the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. Daredevil's new season is coming, but do you remember what happened in the previous season? Or have you even watched the series? If the answer to both questions is no, don't worry. That's why I'm here. The first season of Daredevil aired in 2015, after the 2012 New York Avengers event, where the condition of the Hell's Kitchen area in New York wasn't good, and some bad people wanted to take advantage of it. Here begins the origin of the Devil of Hell's Kitchen and the Kingpin of Hell's Kitchen. This is a battle of their methods to make their city a better place in their own ways. So, friends, welcome to the new episode of Super Recap, where today I am going to give you a complete recap of Daredevil Season 1 with all the details, and that too without spoilers. Let's start. Since the Avengers saved New York from the Chitauri army's attack, the condition of the Hell's Kitchen area in New York has worsened, and the Russian mafia, Yakuza, and Chinese mob are taking advantage of it. Matt Murdock, a blind man, comes to the church to seek forgiveness, not for something he regrets, but for something he is about to do. The Russian mafia is engaged in human trafficking in Hell's Kitchen, where some gang members were taking girls to sell them. Matt, wearing his black mask, comes there, beats up those people, and rescues the girls. In a flashback, we see how young Matt lost his eyes in an accident involving a dangerous chemical truck, while saving an old man's life, but his other senses became sharp. In the present, the next morning, Matt opens a law firm with his friend Foggy Nelson. On the other hand, Karen Page, who works at a company named Union Allied, is found covered in blood in her apartment next to the dead body of her co-worker, Daniel Fisher. Foggy and Matt go to the police custody to talk to Karen, where she initially doesn't tell them much. However, later, when Karen barely survives an attack by a police officer in jail, she tells them that she saw some strange transactions in Union Allied's accounts, indicating that the company is involved in money laundering, and to cover up the scandal, some people tried to frame her. Due to the attack in police custody, Foggy and Matt get Karen released from custody. Later, when Karen goes to her apartment to retrieve a pen drive related to Union Allied's accounts, someone attacks her, but Matt, in his mask, saves her. He then hands over the file related to the scandal to Ben Urich of the New York Bulletin, making the whole city aware of the scandal. To save herself from this major trouble, Karen offers to work for Foggy and Matt. Meanwhile, a man named James Wesley tries to keep his boss's name hidden from this entire scandal and tells the Russian brothers Anatoly and Vladimir Ranskahov to handle the masked man. The Russians kidnap a small boy to trap Matt, who, after a fight with the Russians, ends up badly injured and unconscious in a dumpster. Nurse Claire Temple finds him and takes him to her apartment, where she takes care of his wounds and is surprised when she realizes he is blind. Meanwhile, Foggy shows Karen the other side of Hell's Kitchen. Matt regains consciousness in Claire's apartment, and when she asks for his name, he doesn't tell her but reveals his extraordinary senses. The Russian mobsters, who had kidnapped Claire, torture her to get information about the masked man. But Matt arrives just in time and defeats the mobsters, rescuing Claire. Meanwhile, the Russians, believing Fisk will help them, reach a hospital to find out about Claire. However, Matt reaches there and saves Claire again. This leads to a confrontation where Matt warns the Russians, leading to a huge fight. In the end, he rescues the kidnapped boy. Flashback shows how the Irish mob approaches Matt's father, Jack Murdock, to throw a match. Wanting his son to see him as a winner for once, Jack wins the fight, leaving the prize money in Matt's name. Later, the mob kills Jack under their home. Meanwhile, John Healy, an assassin, kills Prohashka, a taxi company owner, in a bowling alley and gets arrested. The next day, James Wesley visits Nelson and Murdock, knowing the law firm exposed their associate's money laundering scandal. He offers them a huge amount to defend Healy. Foggy refuses, sensing criminal elements, but Matt agrees, wanting to find out Wesley's boss. Karen Page is offered money by Union Allied to stay silent about the scandal, but she goes to New York Bulletin's Ben Urich, revealing more secrets about Union Allied. On the other side, Matt and Foggy successfully defend Healy. However, outside, Matt appears in his mask and beats up Healy, asking him to reveal his boss's name. Healy utters the name Wilson Fisk, who had ordered Healy to kill Prohaska so that Fisk could take over Prohaska's taxi company along with all his assets. Realizing he made a grave mistake by taking Fisk's name, Healy, overcome with fear, takes his own life right in front of Matt. Meanwhile, we see Wilson Fisk in an art gallery gazing at a painting where he meets Vanessa. Prohaska's taxi company is handed over to the Russian mafia to manage. However, Matt, in his mask, attacks them, asking about Fisk. The Russians inform Wesley about this attack, and Wesley assures them that Fisk will help them run the operation. The Russians, feeling insulted, go to the hospital to find the man Matt had tortured on Claire's rooftop. From him, they learn about Claire, whom they abduct and take to their hideout. Just in time, Claire manages to call Matt. The Russians begin torturing Claire to get information about the masked man, but suddenly the lights go out and the masked man himself shows up. After beating them all up, he rescues Claire and takes her away from there. After the entire conflict, the Russians agree to take Fisk's help. Ranskahov brother Anatoly himself goes to meet Fisk, but Fisk is at dinner with Vanessa Mariana, the art gallery curator he recently met. Anatoly interrupts their dinner, and Vanessa feels uncomfortable about the whole incident. Embarrassed and enraged, Wilson Fisk meets Anatoly in anger and brutally beats him to death. Afterward, he orders Anatoly's body to be delivered to his brother, Vladimir. On the other hand, Karen, following Ben Urich's suggestion, takes the money from Union Allied and agrees to work with Ben to expose information about Union Allied to the public in the future. Anatoly's body is sent to the Russians, where they are made to believe that the masked man was responsible for Anatoly's death. Meanwhile, Fisk meets with the leaders of the Chinese mob, Madame Gao, the Yakuza leader, Nobu Yoshioka, and the accountant, Leland Owlsley. He explains to them that what happened with the Russians was for everyone's benefit. Afterward, he requests a special favor from Madame Gao. Matt launches an attack on the Russians, where one of them says, "Don't take our head off like Anatoly." At that moment, the police arrive, leaving Matt surprised. The next day, a woman named Elena Cardenas comes to the Nelson and Murdock office, saying that her landlord, Armand Tully, is trying to evict her and the other residents of her building from their apartments. The landlord is harassing them to vacate the apartments. Foggy goes to talk to Tully's lawyer, Marcy Stahl, who works for Landman, and Zach, where both Matt and Foggy had interned. Additionally, Marcy is Foggy's ex-girlfriend. Marcy tells Foggy that Mrs. Cardenas should vacate the building and take the settlement price, to which Foggy responds that they can't let that happen. Meanwhile, Matt goes to the police station, where he overhears that the Russian who told him not to take his head off is in police custody and mentions a name, Wilson Fisk. As soon as the police hear the name, they kill the Russian, and Matt learns about this. Later, Matt steals a phone from one of the police officers involved and finds out where Vladimir is. Fisk pays Turk Barrett to inform Vladimir that Fisk was the one who killed Anatoly and that the masked man is also working for Fisk. Enraged by this, Vladimir declares the war against Fisk. In response, Fisk uses Madame Gao's suicide bomber to carry out a bomb blast at Vladimir's location. The blast kills almost everyone except Vladimir, who survives. At that moment, Matt, in his mask, arrives in front of Vladimir. However, before Matt can understand the situation, both he and Vladimir find themselves surrounded by the police. Fisk invites Vanessa for another dinner date where he shows her how he wants to save Hell's Kitchen. Meanwhile, more bomb blasts occur in Hell's Kitchen, including one near Mrs. Cardenas' home, injuring Foggy and Karen. Matt finds himself surrounded by the police but realizes they are there on Fisk's orders to kill Vladimir. He quickly takes them all down and escapes with Vladimir to an old warehouse. On the other side, Mrs. Cardenas and Foggy are injured and hospitalized with Karen by their side. Vladimir is shot, and to save him, Matt calls Claire. She advises him to use the flares in the warehouse to cauterize Vladimir's wound. Vladimir screams in pain, which alerts a nearby police officer. The officer quickly calls for backup, but Matt knocks him unconscious. Now Matt and Vladimir are surrounded by police. Fisk's paid officers take control of the situation. Using a police radio, Fisk speaks to Matt. He praises Matt's skills, but warns him that he won't succeed in going further. Fisk then orders a sniper to shoot at the nearby police officers, making it look like the masked man is behind the attack and the bombings in Hell's Kitchen. Even Fisk's bribed officers are injured in the chaos. Vladimir then tells Matt that the police are in Fisk's pocket and reveals how the Chinese mob is selling heroin in Hell's Kitchen. He advises Matt that if he wants to expose Fisk's illegal activities, he needs to go after Fisk's accountant, Leland Owlsley. Vladimir then urges Matt to leave, saying he will stay behind to hold off the police. After the bombings in Hell's Kitchen, the city gives the black masked man a new name, the Devil of Hell's Kitchen.
On the other hand, one of Wilson Fisk's associates, Yakuza boss Nobu Yoshioka, has a shipment of something important coming to the docks. He discusses this with Leland Owlsley. After Nobu leaves, Matt, in his mask, confronts Owlsley. However, before he can extract any information, he is distracted by the arrival of an old man, Stick, Matt's blind mentor. Stick had trained Matt in his childhood to use his heightened senses, but when young Matt began seeing Stick as a father figure, Stick left him. Now, Stick has returned to seek Matt's help. Nobu is bringing a weapon to New York called Black Sky. Stick asks for Matt's assistance to stop it, and Matt agrees, but on one condition. Stick must follow his personal rule and not kill anyone. Meanwhile, Ben Urich teams up with Karen Page to expose Union Allied and those behind it. However, they realize they will need solid evidence for this. Matt and Stick head to the docks to stop the Yakuza. While Matt fights Nobu's men, Stick breaks his promise and kills Black Sky, which turns out to be a child. Furious, Matt confronts Stick and the two fight. Matt overpowers Stick and demands that he leave the city. Elsewhere, as Karen is returning home after talking with Mrs. Cardenas, she is attacked by thugs sent by her landlord Tully. Foggy arrives in time to save her. Karen introduces Foggy to Ben Urich, who explains his investigation to them. At the end of the episode, Stick is seen talking to a wounded man, questioning whether Matt is ready for the upcoming threat. Karen and Foggy tell Matt about their investigation with Ben Urich. Matt agrees to join them, but insists on one condition. They must stay out of danger and work within the boundaries of the law. Meanwhile, Owlsley and Nobu are furious about what happened at the docks and confront Fisk about it. Fisk also learns that Detective Blake, the officer injured during the sniper attack on the day of Vladimir's standoff, has come out of his coma. Fearing Blake might reveal everything, Fisk orders Hoffman to kill him. However, before Hoffman can act, Matt, in his mask, intervenes and stops him. Matt gets critical information about Fisk from Blake before Blake dies. On another front, Madame Gao, who manages the drug trade in Hell's Kitchen, meets Fisk and warns him that he must regain full control of his operations, otherwise he risks being sidelined. We are shown Fisk's childhood, where after witnessing his father brutally beat his mother, young Fisk killed his father. Fisk reveals this dark secret to Vanessa. Meanwhile, Matt, in his mask, shares with Ben Urich the information he learned from Blake. Ben prepares to publish this information in the newspaper to expose Wilson Fisk. However, before Ben can finalize his article, Wilson Fisk himself appears on a news channel, revealing his name to the public and sharing his intentions to save Hell's Kitchen. Vanessa convinces Fisk to do this, and it effectively ruins Matt, Ben, and their allies' efforts to expose him. Now that Fisk is out in the open, Matt, Karen, Foggy, and Ben decide to dig into Fisk's past to find something they can use against him. Matt learns about Vanessa and visits her at her art gallery. After the brief encounter, Matt leaves. Meanwhile, Nobu demands Fisk hand over an entire block of property. Fisk agrees to give it to him, on the condition that Nobu kills the masked vigilante, the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. The block Nobu wants includes the building where Mrs. Cardenas and other tenants are fighting to retain their rent-controlled homes. That same evening, Mrs. Cardenas is killed by a junkie. Matt immediately suspects Fisk's involvement. Tracking him down, Matt reaches a warehouse where he encounters a ninja, Nobu himself. An intense battle ensues and Matt manages to defeat Nobu, but Nobu suddenly bursts into flames. However, Nobu survives the flames. In his injured state, Matt comes face to face with Fisk, leading to a brutal confrontation. Fisk severely injures Matt, leaving him near death. Matt barely escapes and makes it back to his apartment, where Foggy finds him in terrible condition. Claire had already treated Matt's wounds and left. Foggy feels betrayed, realizing Matt has been hiding his identity as the masked vigilante. He questions Matt, asking if he is truly blind. Matt explains that working together at their previous law firm made him realize he had to take the law into his own hands. He shares how he once saved a young girl from her abusive father when the law failed her and has been fighting ever since to make his city better. Foggy, however, cannot accept the deception and decides to leave the firm. Meanwhile, Ben Urich struggles with his wife's hospital expenses as her stay cannot be extended. Faced with financial pressure, Ben decides to take an editor's job instead of continuing as a reporter, meaning he will no longer pursue his investigation into Wilson Fisk. Karen tries to change Ben's mind by taking him to a rest home she recently discovered. Ben says he cannot afford such a high-end place for his wife, but Karen introduces him to an elderly woman named Marlene Vustane, who happens to be Wilson Fisk's mother. Karen brought Ben to meet Fisk's mother, where they learn that Fisk killed his father as a child. Meanwhile, Fisk hosts a gala in Hell's Kitchen in the aftermath of the bombings, but someone poisons the wine. Many guests fall ill, including Vanessa. While recovering from his injuries, Matt says goodbye to Claire, who is leaving the city. Before leaving, Claire advises Matt that if he is going to continue his fight, he needs a protective suit like the one he noticed Fisk's men wear. Matt tracks down Turk Barrett, who had tipped off the Russians about Anatoly's death. Through Turk, Matt finds Fisk's engineer, Melvin Potter, who is being forced to make equipment for Fisk under the threat of harm to someone close to him. Matt convinces Melvin to make him body armor to help stop Fisk from hurting anyone else. Karen discusses with Ben her plan to publish Fisk's story, including the revelation that he killed his father. Ben warns her that no one will believe the story since Fisk's mother has mental health issues. Meanwhile, Fisk stays by Vanessa's side at the hospital while she recovers. Fisk's assistant, Wesley, receives a call from Fisk's mother, informing him that two people visited her. Without informing Fisk, Wesley kidnaps Karen and brings her to a secluded location, threatening her to stop pursuing Fisk. To intimidate her, he places a gun on the table and warns that her friends won't be spared either. When Wesley looks at his ringing phone, Karen seizes the opportunity, grabs the gun, and shoots him dead. Matt, in his mask, meets with Ben and learns about Fisk's partner in Hell's Kitchen's drug trade, Madame Gao. Matt discovers Gao's heroin operation and destroys it, but Gao manages to escape after briefly overpowering him. Fisk learns about Wesley's death and that his last phone call was to his mother, Marlene. Realizing Karen and Ben were involved, Fisk decides to send his mother out of the country for safety. Vanessa, who has recovered, refuses to leave Fisk's side, but Marlene departs. Due to her mental condition, she fails to tell Fisk about her conversation with Wesley. Foggy continues working alone and reconnects with his ex-girlfriend Marcy, sharing details of Ben's investigation. Karen struggles with guilt over killing Wesley, but persuades Ben to publish Fisk's story, including the revelation that Fisk killed his father and is the crime lord known as Kingpin. However, their editor-in-chief, Ellison, refuses to publish it. Ben accuses Ellison of being on Fisk's payroll, leading to his termination. Ben decides to start his own blog to expose Fisk's story. Fisk's informant at the New York Bulletin informs him that Ben visited his mother. Enraged, Fisk visits Ben's apartment and kills him in a fit of rage. The season finale begins with Ben Urich's funeral, attended by everyone except Foggy. Meanwhile, Leland Owsley informs Fisk that Gao has left the country. Fisk shows Leland his accounts, hinting at discrepancies, but Leland confesses that he took half of Fisk's money and plans to leave as well. Leland also reveals that he and Gao were responsible for poisoning Vanessa, and that he has hidden Detective Hoffman, one of Fisk's bought cops, as insurance. If anything happens to Leland, Hoffman will expose Fisk to the FBI. Unable to control his rage, Fisk kills Leland. Foggy visits Matt, who questions why he didn't attend Ben's funeral. Foggy explains that he was working with Marcy to obtain files from Landman and Zach, the law firm working for Fisk. They use these files to start building a case against Fisk and discover Hoffman's location. Matt, in his mask, finds Hoffman and convinces him to testify against Fisk. Hoffman's testimony leads to the arrest of Fisk's corrupt police officers, informants, and even a senator and lawyers from Landman and Zach. The FBI also arrests Fisk's informant at the New York Bulletin. Finally, the FBI storms Fisk's apartment and arrests him. Fisk, while being arrested, gives Vanessa an engagement ring. However, as he is being transported to prison, he manages to free himself with the help of a corrupt FBI officer and hired agents. But just as he escapes, Matt, now wearing his new body armor, arrives. A brutal fight ensues between Fisk and Hell's Kitchen's Devil. After an intense battle, Matt defeats Fisk and hands him over to the police. With Fisk arrested, Vanessa is forced to leave the city alone. The next day, a newspaper features a photo of the masked man with the headline, Daredevil, a name given to him by the people of Hell's Kitchen. Matt, Foggy, and Karen celebrate their victory and continue their mission to do good. So this was the recap of Daredevil Season 1, saving you several hours with all the key details. Creating this recap series takes a bit of time and effort, but the end result is that you can now enjoy this season at your leisure. I'll try to bring the next recap soon, but in the meantime, tell me, what was your favorite moment from the season? Did you notice any similarities between Fisk's and Matt's origins? The comment section is yours. Feel free to share your thoughts. And if you like the video, don't forget to hit the like button. Otherwise, Fisk might come and ask you himself why you didn't like the video.